tongue and roof meetings together. So what'd you think of Skill 16? I loved it, and I really was sad that we have not had in-person meetings for a long time. Thank you, COVID. But anyways, I really enjoyed this week, and I hope you did too. So let's go ahead and dive into Domain G, Skill 16, where we have 51 questions on the exam from Domain G. So determine food and beverage requirements. So we always want to know the steps and knowing how things go in order. So the first step is to outline the program schedule and then determine what meal functions are going to be needed. So once you have your goals and objectives, you want to develop the schedule. So are we going to have banquets? Are we going to have a breakfast? Where are we going to plug in our food? And then consider menu choices. So this is when you want to look at what's available, all the continental breakfast or full buffet breakfast. So you want to make sure that you know the different breakfast options and breaks and kind of what makes them special and unique. Menu choices like sustainability options. You want to consider your attendee profile, dietary needs of the participants. So really selecting menus based on making sure they meet your goals and objectives, and also your audience that's going to be there. What is going to make a lasting impression on your audience? And then you want to consider the service styles. Those are the 8 styles that we learned about. Which style is going to best suit your program schedule and your program needs. Consider RFPs and contracts. As we're talking about RFPs, we want to make sure we remembered that we have to send it to at least 3 different suppliers so you can get kind of an idea of what's going on in the marketplace and what's out there. And then contracts, you want to make sure that you remember the 2 different kinds of comparing bids, like the low bid and the value bid. And then you always want to make sure you get everything in writing, and then you're always checking your BEOs and making sure that everything that the venue has promised you and everything that you've put into your ESG and submitted to the hotel actually made it onto the BEOs. So you're always wanting to double check your contracts. And then consider venue details. This is if you're having event off-site, things like that. And then the staffing ratios, the 1 per 20, and then your guarantees and things like that. So we'll dive a little bit more into that. So again, this was the different service styles. So you want to make sure you know all of these different styles and what makes each unique. So like for the plated, if you're going to have a speaker at your event, you are probably going to want to do a plated meal because it's faster. You can get everything while the speaker is talking. You're not having to wait for people to go through a buffet line. So the plated is when people bring the plate to you. So, and then the buffet style, this is also known as cafeteria style. And that's when everybody gets their own food. And then food stations that are also the action station, if you throw in like a carving station. And then concessions, this is where your guest pays on their own. There's no cost to the organization. I gave the example of food trucks, so that is kind of the concession option. Those are for the larger groups. And so then butler, those are the smaller groups, tray passed hors d'oeuvres, things like that. And then family style, this is like a buca de beppo, also known as English style, where everybody kind of shares off larger size plates. And then French style, this is what it's served table side, like the flambe or guac made at table side. So anything that's made at the table, again, not for large groups, because if you're going to have that individual service, you want to make sure it's just a smaller group. And then last but not least, the Russian style. This also is for the smaller groups where the items are placed on the guest plate right there at the table. So instead of having them plated back in the kitchen and servers serving you the plates, your plates are already preset, and then the server takes the food and puts it onto the plate. So those are the different 8 styles. You want to make sure that you can answer questions, understanding what style is best for the type of, not only type of event that you're having with number of people, but your attendee profile, and what would make sense for that particular function based on the style. And determine which style by communicating with the venue and or caterer. And we're going to consider menu cost. Having Russian service is way more costly than a buffet. So again, considering available staff, the room setup, equipment, and the event program. So taking all of these considerations into play. Select a menu. So when you want to select your menu, you definitely want to make sure that you know your attendee profile. You really have to know who's coming to your event and what their expectations are. So really knowing the demographics of your groups will really help when it comes to selecting your menus. Timing based on geographic location of the event. So like my family, I have family in Argentina, and they don't eat dinner until like 9 o'clock at night. As where my family, we eat dinner at 5:30. So you want to make sure you know the demographics of your group. So, and same thing with the gender. So if you have a 50-50 mix, or if you have all male or all female, you know that you are going to order different menu items based on the gender that attends. Lifestyle, so you have your athletes versus a business person. So I gave the example of like the football players. You're going to order something different for, a football team versus some business professionals or things like that. So, or if you have like a peewee football versus an NFL football team. So knowing the lifestyle of the attendees and the demographics. Food trends, so kind of what's popular. If you also have local fare, if you're going to be in, San Diego, you're going to have, maybe like a beach theme, something like that. And dietary needs also kind of play into factor here. We talked about that a little bit. All the gluten-free, dairy-free, hotels are getting really good with making tent cards and really pointing out for food allergies and knowing the difference between a food allergy and a food preference. So, and then brain foods, that's really stopping the processed foods and, trying to avoid those sugar crashes. So when your attendees come back from a break, they can actually focus on the meeting without their blood sugar being affected. So those are some things to consider when we're going to be selecting our menus. And dealing with the venue. So you want to determine supplies and equipment rentals. That's mostly for off-site events if you're doing things off-site. Setup and staffing, we want to make sure that we remember that it's 1 per 20 guests would be the normal staffing, and 1 per 10 for a high level. And then for bartender staffing, 1 per 75 to 100 guests. So if you had a group of 300 people and I asked you what how many staff members you would need for 300 people, you'd take 300 and then you would divide it by 20, and that gives you 15. So 15 staff members for your event. And if you had a high level, you would take 300 divided by 10, and then you would need 30 people. So, and then same thing with the bartender. So for 300 people, you would need three bartenders. So confirm your expectations through your event specifications guide, your ESG. This is your main Bible, everything that is going to be included that you're going to take and put all of the information into your ESG. And then that's the document that you share with the hotel. And then the hotel creates the BOs based on the ESG. So BEO, ESG, ABC, OMG. So all of these fun industry terms. Guarantees. So typically 48 to 72 business hours prior to the very first event. So that is when your guarantees are due. Now, again, remember, this isn't how it's actually done at your location or what you're typically used to. This is what the book says. So we need to memorize the standard, which is 48 to 72 business hours. And then remember what a guarantee is. The guarantee is the amount that you are guaranteeing to the hotel. So that's the amount that you're going to pay for. Whether you go over, then you will have to pay for anything over your guarantee. If you go under your guarantee, you still have to pay for what you guarantee. So think of it, your guarantee is what you're guaranteed to pay. If you have additional people, then you're going to pay more. But if you have less, you're still locked into your guarantee. And then oversetting the room. So once you've given that guarantee number, the venue will set for 5 to 10% over for the meeting room. So not 5 to 10% for the food. Generally for the food, the chef prepares 5% over the guarantee for the food. Again, some hotels only prepare for 3. Again, this is something you want to contract and prepare or know ahead of time. But for the test purposes, oversetting the room by 5 to 10%, and then the food is prepared at 5% over. So if you have guests that you weren't expecting that didn't register and show up, the chef has some food for them. My favorite thing to talk about, the bar, beverage service. Safety is the number one concern. So make sure you know all the laws in the meeting, in the location that your meeting is being held. So, for instance, you only have to be 21 to drink, or you have to be 21 to drink in the United States, but in South America, where my cousins are, there's really, if you can reach the bar, you can drink. No, just kidding. That's their joke. That's not mine. So 18, you have to be 18 to drink there. So if your meeting is being held in Argentina, it would be okay for 18-year-olds to have beverages there in Argentina. So make sure you know the laws for where your meeting is being held. Hosted bar. So the hosted bar is just like it sounds. You're hosting everybody's alcohol. So the organization pays for the drinks. Cash bar is like it sounds. You have cash. You have to pay cash to have a drink from the bar. So that is a cash bar, is when your attendees are having to pay for their drinks. And then there's the combination, which is, what do you think? Yeah, a combination of the 2 bars. So if you have an open or a host bar and a cash bar component. So for the first hour, you are going to host for 1 hour, or you're going to host for 2 drink tickets. And then after that, it turns to a cash bar. So the organization provides a little bit, and then the attendee kicks in if they wish to continue to drink more. So that is a combination bar. And then a ticketed bar, which is basically those lovely, colorful tickets. Those are event sponsors can purchase tickets for the organization. So if you have a sponsor that wants to, buy tickets for, that's actually the better way to do it, because then it's a little bit more controlled. And then there's no surprises. And then host paying by the hour, or by the drink, or by the bottle. And then that gets a little bit trickier because it's not as controlled. So you want to make sure that it's in the budget for estimating how much, and if you know your demographics and you know your group and your history, then it might be okay to do, not as risky. You are responsible. The event professional is responsible. So make sure that you know the laws and that you are comfortable with your hosting, and to make sure that everybody stays safe, because safety is the number one priority of your attendees. And then for responsible service training, so the venue and the bartenders have to go through all of these training, so they know proper serving, when people need to be cut off, things like that. So serving it right is in British Columbia, and then the tips training is what we have here in the U.S. And then the International Center for Alcohol Policies, and then again, monitor that your guests are not over consuming. So The bartender is responsible, but the event professional is also responsible to make sure that everybody is safe. And then that's it. Okay, so again, remember, this was skill 16. This is coming directly from the CMP International Standards that has it at 15, but we know it's 16. So you want to make sure that when you read these, you understand and know what they're asking for. So identify needs and establish guidelines for food and beverage service to meet budget and objectives. So guidelines for food and beverage services. So that is really like knowing your demographics, what type of foods to serve, things like that. Select food and beverage service providers and menu following event design and within budget. So again, if you're hiring an outside contractor or a service provider having an off-site event, and then selecting menus if you're having like a luau theme. So that's what the event design is, like the luau theme, and then the budget is obviously what can you afford? Can you afford a continental breakfast, or can you afford a full buffet breakfast? So you want to make sure you're always staying within your budget. And then use relevant rules and regulations to manage alcohol service to comply with legal, organizational, and event policies. So again, like we were talking about the drink tickets and really, limiting how much your attendees are drinking and making sure that everybody's responsible, because safety is the number one consideration for your group. So, all right, that's it for food and beverage. So we are in week 8 out of 16, which is pretty awesome. So that's halfway there. And we read skill 16. We finished up chapter 4 in our PMM book. We spent 45 minutes on glossary terms and time block for next week. And next week, we are just doing one skill again. We're doing skill 17, which is a pretty intense skill. It's a lot of information. So you might need to read it twice. So go through skill 17 and then make sure you're doing your 45 minutes of glossary terms. So we're going to do the skill 17 video is 60 minutes, so it's an hour long. And then you've got all of your glossary terms. And then for next week, we're going to read chapter 12 in your PMM book. So, all right, my friends. Well, that was it for week 16. I hope you really enjoyed it. And just keep taking those small steps forward, one skill at a time, only focusing on what is in front of you. It will help you so you're not overwhelmed and just focusing on what's in front of you. Have a great day. Keep taking those small steps forward, and we'll see you next week. Bye.